Welcome to CrossPlatform Podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I am Augusto Pinaud,
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
and we are here today to have a little fun and talk about how to solve productivity problems in platforms. And today we're going to be playing with two betas. We are playing in one side with oh, iOS 15, technically. Really, we are playing with iPadOS 15, and we are talking or comparing it with what's coming with Android 12. So,
It's neat that these two are overlapping the way they are. I mean, there's always that back and forth between what version is going to be coming, what version is out, who's going to have the best features, and the fact that these are overlapping, and they're overlapping in some feature sets, but not to the point where we're saying, "Ooh, this is going to be better than that one." Everything I've seen across the board says that these are going to be two bang up updates. Uh, one is going to be better than the other in certain areas, but they're really, I almost want to say, ecosystem driven updates to the platforms. So it's going to be neat to dig into these. We're going to try to avoid the "I'm better than you" type of thing because honestly, I don't think it applies in this conversation. At least not with what I'm seeing with these two platform updates.
yeah, the reality is there is not one better than the other. It is about which features you prefer to pick. Even if you go to the previous versions, yeah, if for you certain features are more important than others, that's when the distinction comes. But it's not really that one is really better than the other. I think that part is gone. That was true, or maybe partially true, many years ago.
Now, there is one area I'll concede up front, and just to get this on the table and then off the table. And that's the fact that Apple will get their software update on their devices faster than Android will. And the
Mhm.
problem on the Android side, which has always been the case, is that carrier battle of getting those updates out. The only phones that'll immediately have the updates will be the Pixel versions. Beyond that, who knows when we'll see Android 12 roll out on the other devices. I've got a flagship Samsung, and I couldn't tell you when I'm going to see 12 roll out on this thing. So I'll concede that to Apple. You own your ecosystem. You can push your stuff out there. And correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to make this available all the way back to, what is it, version or iPhone 6 or 7 or something like that?
iPhone 6 Plus. So
That's
so
crazy.
let's start there because I agree with you. That's insane. In the iPad, this iPad that I have in my hand, if you're watching the video, is an iPad Air 2. This
Mm-hmm.
device has 8 years, okay, and it's going to get iPad OS 15. The iPhone 6 Plus, it's probably that 7 or 8 years, and it's still going to get given. May not get all the features. Okay, fine. But the fact that you're getting that is impressive. The other thing that is impressive to me is this week, Monday, if my memory serves. So it's the 16th. So the 14th of June, Apple released another update for the 12 operating system. That
Hmm.
again, it's shocking when you think we are talking already about 15, and they're still doing updates for 12 for all those devices that are in the market that have that for security updates. So we're security update only, but it's still you're talking about devices that have 10 years that are
Yeah, but
still getting
but we
those.
do have to be cautious about it. I do have an iPad here, an old one or older one, and I think it's running iOS 12. And it works, it does its job. The problem is many of the apps, especially powerful apps that have been
Mhm.
updated, require later versions of the operating
Yes.
system. So even though the ecosystem may support a later version, it doesn't necessarily mean that the apps that you're using will continue to work because you don't have the latest and greatest. And that's a frustration point. I don't see that as often on the Android side. Android tends to support later versions longer, but it's something that we have to take into consideration. I mean, you see on the Android side, when you do a software update like this or a platform update, there's usually about a week or 2 week lag, and all of a sudden you get a massive wave of application updates as the developers release their mods based on the betas and the developer kits. But even that, I mean, you have to think about it carefully. If you have an older application that you use to keep things going, you may want to check and see, are they planning to continue to support this on the later versions of the software?
Well, and one of the things that Apple do reasonably well is on those devices. We have my daughter's as one of those devices. She still runs on iOS 12, and some of the applications run on iOS 13 on her iPad, but don't run on 12 on her phone. And but Apple still allow her to do the latest compatible version on her
Mm-hmm.
phone. So yeah, you will not be able to get the one that the developer mark as iOS 13 or and above, but you can get, or Apple will allow you to get the oldest
Mm-hmm.
compatible version. So that, at least that works reasonably well.
Yeah, and it's just the nature of things getting older on these devices, um, but it kind of plays into the hand of supporting these older devices longer. I mean, supporting all the way back to the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 6. You're talking about legacy devices that literally, in some cases, are getting to the end of their hardware life. The batteries are starting to wear down. You know, the functionality. I'm willing to bet there's at least one or two cracks in the screen. Those are the types of things where it's like, I understand the benefit of them supporting it, but there's a point where you're not really carrying that much of an audience forward. Now, something like 15, it may not have been hard for them to do that. But again, I look at things on the Android side, and on the Android side, it's catch as catch can with these updates. You're going to release an update, and then the carriers are going to fool around with it, and the OEMs are going to fool around with it, and you're going to get some variant of it loaded onto your device, and hopefully it'll carry the core functionality along. So,
Yeah, that's interesting. I have not my experience with Android Chromebooks are really limited. You know, my first Chromebook is what we're using to record. Lenovo Duet is the first time I have a proper Chromebook. The Frankenstein previous version was a broken Surface with Neverware
mm-hmm.
installed before even Google acquired Neverware. But it's true that is true that now it goes with Apple. They can tell you you are going to get your update Friday, October
Mm-hmm.
10, and it's going to be Friday, October 10, or whatever Friday is in October, but or November, and that really makes a difference. The other thing that I have no knowledge is how it works the updates, because what I've seen over the years is that there is a lot more people getting to the latest operating system on the iOS than on
Mm-hmm.
Android.
Yeah, and that again goes to that carrier issue, and it goes to the manufacturer of the device itself. The only way to equate them when you think about the devices is you have to equate Apple devices to Pixel devices if you're looking at the phones,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the only one that has the direct hardware to software connection that Apple has. It's a similar thing because they can just hand it right to it because it's their device. Apple doesn't have any of these third-party devices to deal with by design. They've never had that. Well, very briefly back in the late 80s, or in the early 90s, but with all of the mobile devices, they set the rules. Well, when you have things like a Samsung device or you have something like a Motorola, the manufacturer now has to take the software version and say, okay, is this going to break anything that we've done to the software to date? Are we going to be able to deploy it? How's it going to deploy? So there's that level of testing that has to happen on top of it. And then, and this is where everything gets bogged down, it has to be released to the carriers to say, okay, push this out to your phones. And then the carriers have to go through it. and look at it and say, okay, what tweaks have been made and what have we done to it? And usually the carriers make more of a mess out of it than the manufacturers do. And then eventually you get this software download, which is a gig and a half in some cases if it's a big enough update. And then it deploys, and then you keep your fingers crossed that everything works. So this is not a little thing. I'm not kidding. Trust me. I always take a long, deep breath every time I do a major software update and make sure my device is backed up, because I have bricked a device over the years. So, but this is a really important aspect of this as we dig into these kinds of features that they're rolling out. I didn't see in either one of these platforms anything that says you must do this update. These are all features and functionality that are definitely valuable and value add, but there's nothing that makes this required. So if you're hesitant, you can let it ride for a while. You can let it, let some other people try it out and test it out and be the guinea pigs if you're not comfortable with taking that step. But if you
Yeah, and
are,
I
and it's
actually,
available.
actually, you made a really valid and good point. And I have over the years advised, especially corporate clients,
Mhm.
more than my small business ones. My small business ones tend to suffer less because they're not massive systems and securities on the back end. So we find a little problem, we can fix it. But when I have my corporate clients, I always tell them, hold, don't update. You're going to see the red thing, enjoy the red thing for a week or two. Let's see what happened. And I don't remember which operating system it was. May have been 12, may have been 11. I don't remember. That broke something with Exchange and
Mhm.
the iOS phones. And I remember the email from the client, thank you for not letting us update, because it was
Right.
a big deal at the time.
Hmm. And that's, again, I go back to the fact that it's worse on the Android side, because if you take a business environment, let's say it's a small company, 20 people, nothing bad. If you're Android focused, the odds are really good you're going to have at least 5 different types of devices, unless they are
Mm-hmm.
all business issued. There isn't that standardization. At least on the iPhone side, you've got standard devices. You know what the rules are. So it's, from an IT support standpoint, it's that much more complicated. So, so thinking about these two platforms, and let's start on the Apple side, because I know most of our listeners will be Apple people to start with. Out of everything that got announced in 15, what's your first favorite thing what got you most excited right away?
Well, what got me more excited was FaceTime. I think video conference is here to stay. And one of the limits, I have said that Apple don't do everything. Okay, it's true. You don't
Mm-hmm.
get every feature on your phone, but in general, whatever feature they decide to add, it has with it's added with a lot of ease for the end user, and that's something that Apple tend to do in
Mm-hmm.
general well. So FaceTime, it was really easy to do. Right? You find a name, hit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the group FaceTime was a little bit more challenging to explain to the parents. My parents are my test market for difficulties on these
Mm-hmm.
things, but it's still they could figure it out how to join and how to get it. Maybe not to initiate it without explanation, but the second part.
Just to provide some context for anybody who's not familiar with what FaceTime is, and it's possible,
Correct.
FaceTime is the built-in Apple, I don't want to say equivalent, but almost predecessor in spirit to tools like Zoom. It,
Hmm.
it gives you real-time video and audio chats between multiple people simultaneously. Uh, the only core requirement is, until this point, it was limited to Apple devices only.
Correct. The
Go
other
ahead.
thing that was the other thing that was announced with that is, oh yes, it was limited, but also I need to give you my information. Now, okay, so I need to give you my email that was tied up with my FaceTime, or I need to give you my phone number tied up with my FaceTime. That was the only way to
Mm-hmm.
initiate one. Now they introduce a link. So today, prior to the show, we were playing with it, okay, and I just sent a link to Art. And I can use that link to schedule in a calendar, to send it in an email, any telegram, anything. But there is no information of my phone or my email or nothing. So I can now schedule a call with Art, and really you have no way to call me back. That is not bad unless you join in there. And I can leave those codes or those links open. So I can say, okay, this is the link I use for sales, and leave it in there and share it with everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and then somebody will pop up. That works. But I think, we do with my in-laws a call every other Saturday. And my in-laws are old and not technologically savvy, so has always been a struggle. We went through Google Meet instead of Zoom because of the ease into that. Okay, you just need to click on the link and it will open the browser and connect for you. And at that time we did it. Zoom was not now you can, but at that time was not. And after you have one thing working that they understand, you don't change it. Okay, but they know how to use FaceTime. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
they can call FaceTime. The only issue we have is one of the people who come to these meetings regularly do not use iPhone. Everybody else is on iPhone except one person.
Yep.
Now we will be able to create the event, give it a link, call it family weekend or family call, and the link will always be available. And regardless of device, they will come and connect. So that's
And
awesome.
this is, if you've been an Apple watcher for a long period of time, you realize how seismic of a shift this is in Apple's thinking. And if you look at the equivalent on the Android side, there are, I could think of probably 6, maybe 8 different video conferencing tools that want to be FaceTime, want to be like FaceTime on the platform. None of them have that adoption because they're not embedded into the operating system. And even the closest ones that are, things like Google Duo, still don't have massive user adoption because you have so many options. But to have something like this, if I wanted to, prior to this, if I wanted to have you, Augusto, join me on a call that I originate from the Android side, well, you would have had to have installed something like Google Duo, which got into the Apple Store and you could do that. But it was never convenient. It was never smooth. And this is a different mindset from Apple to finally open that door a little bit and say, okay, I'm going to open the velvet rope for you and let you into the club for a little bit. That's a whole different conversation now. And I have to wonder where the next, if this is well received and well used, what's next? iMessage?
Well, that will be interesting. And the other thing, it's not yet available, but it will be available. It's announced, and you have to see the button. It's just not available in the beta.
Mm-hmm.
Is you will be able to click and share your screen. I don't
Yeah.
know how that's going to work with non-Apple devices. We don't know.
It's going to be an interesting. This is definitely early days. And just
Mhm.
to clarify for people, we did try this. We used this. Augusto sent me a link. I pulled it up on my phone. It connected right away. The only hiccup we hit is it doesn't like Microsoft Edge for some reason right now, but it comes up fine with Safari or Chrome. I went into it with Chrome. I could see the video. I could hear the audio. It was an easy enough process. The screen controls have a very Apple feel to them, oddly enough. And on the Android side, that feels a little different from a user experience standpoint, but it worked. That's the ironic thing is it worked first try. There was nothing to set up, nothing to configure, and the link he sent me through the messaging client we always use. So it's a very low bar to jump to be able to use this option that they've provided. And I think this is one of those types of things that heavy FaceTime users are going to see the value of this immediately. And I like how you mentioned the fact that some of these links you could leave open conceptually. You could create FaceTime basically inputs for yourself.
Mhm.
Protect those links, send them to particular clients, post them in specific places, and be able to manage that connection a little different. It'll be very interesting to see how that part evolves, especially outside of Apple. because this is one of those things that you can cross, like I said, you can cross the velvet rope, which means you sent me that link. What can I do with that link then? Can I put it into a team and make it commonly available? Is it limited to an individual? There's a lot of interesting opportunities, and it's intriguing. So I'm glad to see they're doing this.
Yeah, I think this is, as you said, something we rarely see Apple do, but it's really well so far. I mean, we're talking about developer beta 1. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the as raw as this thing it's going to be before you can see it. And it works. It works well. I have done already playing with it, calls in Androids, calls in Windows, calls across the pond, and all of them has worked well.
Yeah, it's a good step. So on the Android side, it's not necessarily the thing that got me most excited, but it's a big shift again for them. And this is this concept of Material You, YOU, not the letter U. And what they're doing, if you go back in Android history, when they made the shift from the Holo UI over to the material style interface, developers and everybody were like, oh, wow, this is different. This is a new design. It's a new metaphor. It looks so clean. And that's what it's been for the longest time. Well, Material You is actually taking some of the things that you discovered that some vendors have added into the platform, like Samsung, to do something simple like, oh, I don't know, pull the colors out of the lock screen image that you've decided on, and then changing the color scheme of your UI to blend with that color choice, or give you complete control over that, picking and choosing the thematic pieces you want as part of the operating system. Now, I know lots of Android phones have that ability through their launcher. Samsung does it through the One UI interface. A lot of the launchers themselves allow you that custom control. But this is the first time it's been doing it at the operating system level. And that's a big shift, because that means a developer can say, use whatever theme the user has chosen. You then have continuity of user experience. Now, the Apple people are probably listening to me going, that's what we have. Well, yeah, you have that. It's all white. It's all, it looks all the same. Android side, the majority of the time, people like to tinker with it. They like to change it, nuance it, make it their own. And this is a great example of Google saying, you know what? We get it. We're going to add this in. What I find intriguing about this, though, is this is not limited to the mobile platform, though. Material You is also being extended into the Chrome OS operating system, or Chrome operating system, and we're going to see it popping up in other places as well, so that control over what things look like and how they work is going to be baked in from the ground up. And I think that's a nice change. It's a nice way to keep that separation between the Apple and the Android worlds as to, do you want what has been decided is best for you, or do you want to be able to make this ugly hot dog looking thing because you chose it? Well, if you like that option, you have those picks, that pick and choose. So it'll be nice to see it in use. I've seen a couple of the beta shots of it. Like I said, I've been doing something like that on Samsung for quite a while. So it'll be interesting to see how it carries it further into the operating system and the applications themselves.
See, one of the things that it was also exciting for me was what Apple called Focus, that as far as I understand is similar to what Android called Profiles. And
Mm-hmm.
and I've been playing with them. I have one of my iPads already, obviously on iOS 15 or two of them, and then I've been playing with it and testing the profiles. And it's the granularity. This is not an option that you had before. Now I have that granularity to say, I am doing podcasting right now. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to put the focus, and I don't want anybody or anything to pop up on my screen because I may be sharing my screen and I don't want that. Or I'm in a conference call or a FaceTime meeting or a Zoom, and I can open that and eliminate any notifications on my screen or just accept notifications or certain notifications. So
The focus mode, when I saw that described what struck me is this is almost like virtual desktops. I'm creating an environment focused around a particular type of work that I want to do. And I thought it was intriguing. One, it makes sense because people are so overwhelmed with distractions and things like that to provide them extra capability to do that. But I'll be very curious to see as this starts to get into people's hands, how effectively does it help them? Or do they run into the walls quickly and things like that? I've been looking at equivalent capabilities within Android from an application standpoint and within existing vendor operating system variants, and there's some of that capability, but not to the same level as what Apple's describing. So I'll be curious to see as more people get their hands on it to say, is this thing good, or is it kind of a pat on the head to, oh, we're trying to make your life a little bit
Well, I'm
simpler.
going to say on the test that I have, and obviously it's not a long test, I was impressed because I create two profiles. Okay, one profile was podcasting. Okay, so if I go and activate it, number one, if you're an Apple user and send me a text, you're going to get a reply on podcasting. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
you know what it is. Second, if the other one I created was reading. Okay, and me, like most people, okay, go to read and then the notification comes ding ding, and you're like, oh, and then the next thing you know is I was reading and now half an hour passed,
Mm-hmm.
and I went and did this. Now I went and said, okay, I create a reading, and reading hides everything but the Kindle, the RSS, and the notifications are only the calendar. Every other notification, text message, and such are out of my device. So it is really cool to see that virtual desktop that now I can go in there, select that, and it will rearrange everything, disappear everything. So I can do focus reading again.
Do you
And
need to manually turn it on and off?
you can do both. You can turn it manually or you can do schedules.
Okay, so that was going to be my question, because if we dig back into our other lives of productivity, if I set up a Pomodoro where I'm going to run 25 minutes, I may want to go in and say I'm going to do 25 minutes of podcasting work. Well, that focus of 25 minutes, that to me starts to get very compelling,
Mhm.
because now you can lock yourself down for that period, and then when you're done, it automatically frees it back up. That's pretty interesting. I'll be very curious to see.
Yeah.
This is the whole ecosystem play. I'll be very curious to see the Android developers who like that model and start to write apps that do similar things before it ever makes it into the actual operating system at that same degree. So,
Yeah, and it has, it has a couple of automations that are really cool. So for example, on the books, okay, it has an automation. When I open the Kindle, it automatically turns into reading profile.
mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think that's awesome. You can do locations, you can do so, hey, when I get to the school, for example, that's not going to happen. I get to pick the kids at school, and there's certain things I can create a profile of school and do certain things, or work or home or whatever, or you can do time. The other thing you can do in the menu is you can click focus and say, okay, give me an hour or give me until this evening. These are the options it's giving me right now until I leave this location or until the end of the next event. So I can put on my calendar cross-platform podcast recording, open podcasting, and mark until this event ends, and it will stay on podcasting until my calendar is out. And I think
So
that's awesome.
okay, so you're saying it can turn off when you leave an area. Can you activate it when you enter an area?
You can activate it when you enter an area. That's a good question. I don't know, but I'm checking.
And the reason why I asked that is because that's
Yes, you
intriguing.
can.
Okay, because that's a geofencing model that's you'll find
Mhm.
equivalent in things like Alexa. Oops, sorry, go back to sleep. Um, Madame A, and I'll say Bixby because nobody uses it. But those types of things, you can use that geofencing model. Say I'm entering this area, shut down my notification. So if you were going into a work environment or something like that, you could have those automatically adjust. I like that capability. I try to balance every position. My only downside of this would be that you have to think this stuff through. You're going to have to plan it out a little bit, and
Yes.
that's just going to come with time. You're going to get this set up the way you want. you're going to get it set up the way you don't want, and eventually, hopefully, the two will meet. So,
Right. And then, but for example, when I work with clients, there are certain clients that live on Microsoft environment, and there have
mm-hmm.
other clients who live on Google. Now
Okay.
I can create a profile, client A, okay, and then ask them to move all their Microsoft applications to the front. And when I'm working with my device in there, that's all that I'm going to see in there. And then
That's really interesting.
when I get to the other client who works in Google, it will flip them all and reorganize. So I have only the Google applications and I don't need to deal right now. If you look my communication folder, you will
Mm-hmm.
see Teams and FaceTime and Google Meet and all these other things. If I could make those cleanups, even if they require a little bit of time, it's going to be awesome.
Now, just to be clear, also, this functionality that we're talking about is available on the phone as well as on the iPad.
That's correct.
Okay, because that's where I see that type of client A, client B, client C type of functionality really becoming useful
On
is
the phone.
on the phone. Well, I was going to say on the iPad, because I'm going to be working on for this client's work for the next 2 hours. Tap, here's my quote virtual desktop for that with everything in there, including any shortcuts I need or web links or anything. So it almost becomes a dashboard type of interface to be
Right.
able to control those experiences. Very cool.
Yeah, and the other cool thing they are doing with this is what they call time sensitive notifications. So you can
Okay.
select so certain apps or people can notify you immediately. So let's say I'm reading, for example. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I can activate that. So if you text me and he gets, hey, Augusto is reading and say, no, I need to talk to him right now, it will give you an option to click in there so the notification pass my thing. And if you say, no, it's not important, he will get it when he get it. The system will allow you to do that. And I think that will be, again, really cool.
Yeah, one of the things that within Android itself, you have they tackled the notifications issue in the last version. So, for
Much better
example,
than iOS in general, by the way.
well, and that was one of the big things that Apple was touting and everybody was talking about with this release is that they finally are getting notifications under control. If I go into my notification panel on my phone, one of the options I have is I can snooze a notification just by swiping on it and selecting the delay. Or I can go into configuration settings and change how that specific notification works. And this is something that happens all the time is you install a new application and then all of a sudden you're getting notifications out the wazoo from that application. You're like, oh, I didn't ask for any of these. You used to have to dig through all the settings to be able to get to that notification. Now you can just open up that notification, make it a silent one or turn it off completely, and you're good to go. So this is on both platforms, the fact that they've recognized that notifications are a problem and are giving you ways to control your notification experience in various different manners is an absolutely good thing, because I think it's just we all go notification blind after a while. You will get notifications, we won't pay attention to them, we'll miss them. I mean, I've actually had notifications set up where a text message, if I miss it, it'll come back again and come back again. And why? Because I miss it. And I need to be able to get those as they come through. So just to keep us moving forward a little bit, one of the things that was on both platforms, both updates, is privacy. Privacy is a big thing in both of these. So, Augusto, why don't you walk us through what Apple is pushing through on the privacy side, and then I want to talk about what Android's doing, because they're both doing very similar things.
They are doing very similar things, and it's been interesting. Obviously, these privacy tracking things, it's an issue for certain companies. Facebook is being vocally complaining about it, but also, yeah, as technology has evolved, the use of technology has evolved. Yeah, the tracking, it is funny for me as a tech person when I hear your non-tech friends that we all have come in and say, I don't understand. I was Googling this thing and suddenly now it's showing everywhere. Well, yeah,
Yep.
that's tracking. Okay, that's tracking for you. And that tracking for you can go to the name, email, phone number, address, and more. And that's part of what the both are trying to fight. One of the
I
things that
I got to give Apple credit. They've got a great ad out right now showing that whole mental tracking process. I think the person goes and buys something from a barista, and then all of a sudden the barista hops the bar and is now following them through the rest of their day. And they just keep having more and more people. And while it seems a little superlative, I think it's pretty accurate. It's a good way to understand how this carries forward and the importance of being able to say, you know what? I'm not going to share everything with everybody.
no, and it's really important and that we see those things and that we understand that we are being tracked all over all the time. So that is really, really important. And yes, that video, I agree with you, is fantastic because it's showing how you are being tracked all the time and how you don't even notice it.
So both of them are now offering privacy dashboards. How is on the Android side, the privacy dashboard gives you the ability to see everything that has accessed the microphone, the camera, your location. It also pulls sensitive data anytime something is accessed sensitive data, and it allows you to adjust permissions on all of those things across the board for the past 24 hours. I think all that's great. I wish it were longer than 24 hours because honestly, you can miss when something is triggered
Yeah.
and then you don't know. But just the fact that you can pull that information up and see why the heck did this application access my microphone? And then say, well, guess what? You're not doing that anymore. And they've even added in Android 12, they're adding in indicators that show up in the top bar that say when the camera's active and when the microphone's active. And I think that's really important. When you think about webcams almost always have a light next to them that indicate that they're on. Well, your phone doesn't have any of that. And especially on the Android side, as we're starting to see phones now, the first vestiges of phones that have under-screen cameras. But you don't even see the dot anymore. You don't even know the camera's there. And yet it could be active. This kind of notification is going to be important. Now, again, here's the caveat. On the Android side, it's up to the developers to make sure they're putting the notifications there. And they're providing validates in the code itself and remove any time that it's not supposed to be used. So there's always a bit of a catch-22 on that side. We don't have it quite as locked down. But just the fact that you have that control level is big.
I think it's a move in the right direction. And Apple started with little, getting their toes wet on iOS 14 with this, and you start getting notifications when certain things were happening. And I think it's the right direction.
One of the other features that I'm happy to see Android has done is they provide a notification to indicate when the clipboard has been read on your device. And a lot of people are like, okay, fine. I don't know how many times I've gone through and said, oh, okay, I'm going to grab this phone number so I can look it up. Or I'm going to grab a name. Or I'm going to Well, every time that clipboard's accessed, in the background, the developer can go and grab whatever's on the clipboard and pull it. Well, that's a big privacy thing. And it can be a big security thing. So visibility and transparency seems to be the watchword in many of these capabilities. And again, I'm really glad to see that they've got it in place. I also consider this step one. This has got to go further. It's got to go further in every version. It's got to go further in every update.
Yeah, Apple iOS and iPad OS do something that I really like. That was introduced on iOS 14, if I'm not mistaken. That is, if you copy in one application and paste on the other one, it lets you know you paste from this other application. And I think, again, is what you're saying. That is fantastic to know. Do I know most of the time? Yes, but I want to know from where it's coming, especially when I have the ability to copy on iPad A and paste on computer B. That is coming important to know where my information is copy and paste.
Yeah, I would like to see, and this is not an Android 12 thing, it's whatever version comes. I would like to see the same type of thing we have with the privacy dashboard with application sharing. So if I go and grab something and I share it to another application, Within the next 24 hours, I'd like there to be an audit somewhere that says, hey, this application shared to this application, and
Mhm.
so on and so on, and this is what was shared. And be able to go in there and say, wait, why did that get shared to that app? That to me, again, is the transparency piece. So,
Yeah.
very important stuff.
The other big thing I saw on iOS 15, and I really hope that we are going to see the same on Android 12, and I don't know, is my impression is this is the first time that Apple said, okay, we are going to call this piece for the computers Mac OS, and this piece for the iPads iPad
Mm-hmm.
OS, and this piece for the phones iOS, and for the home automation home OS. But we are trying.
We had an earthquake. No, we didn't. We had a footquake. That's all right. So, for those of you watching, Augusto suddenly tilted sideways. So,
So for those who are watching live, and for everybody who hear the beautiful microphone, I apologize. That's what happened when you kick the microphone, the cable of the microphone, thinking that you can do something that you cannot.
oh boy,
Um,
I've done that multiple times. So,
so what I was saying is one of the cool things with this is they are coming finally to uniform capabilities.
mm,
For a while you could do things on the phone that then you could not do on the iPad, or things on the Mac that you could not do. The reality is the phone, the iPads, the tablets, the Chromebooks, the Android phones are so ridiculously powerful that there is no reason for them not to be able to do things. Android, you have the DeX, okay, where you can
mm-hmm.
turn the Android into a full desktop or a full Chromebook desktop. Okay, you have the power on the Chromebooks. This Chromebook that I have, this Lenovo Duet, when you connect it to the mouse, act or the interface is a Chromebook interface. When you disconnect the mouse, immediately goes to Android, and I think it's super super cool that it does that.
we're,
But
we're go
I
ahead.
love the idea of uniformity. Let's forget about the device and let's think on what is convenient and what is your style. Because there is people who thrive on the iPads, okay, or the tablet format. I'm one of those. Okay, I got my first iPad in 2010, and in less than a year and a half, it was my main machine. I got rid of the Mac, I got rid of the PCs, I got rid of everything, and I love the form factor. Not only that, has getting even better over the years as
Mm-hmm.
powers and everything else. But I know many people who love the traditional laptop form
Mm-hmm.
or even the desktop. So let me, the user, pick the platform that is going to make me happy, okay, or the device that is going to make me happy, but make me fully compatible. Because I know more users coming back to this productivity topic that struggle because they can do certain stuff in the desktop, but then if they want to
Mm-hmm.
do other stuff, now they need to pick their phone or they need to pick the tablet because they cannot do everything in one
It
device.
it's interesting that you brought that up because that's one of the things that you can see in the product releases that are coming from Apple is that they want you to operate within, even more so than they have in the past, within the Apple ecosystem. And if you do that, everything's going to work great. It's going to work smooth. It's going to be bulletproof for connections. Life will be good and the sun will shine. That's fine. On the other side of the equation, we're actually starting to see some of that mindset, but from a slightly different approach. And I'll take it from the Android app perspective. Android apps run on Android phones, just makes sense. But you can run them on Chromebooks. You're getting to the point now, and it's going to be very soon, where you're going to be able to run them natively on Windows machines. So as you start to have these two platforms spread themselves around so there's equity within the platform, they still continue to build vertically within their own column ecosystems. And the people who get caught are the ones that have a Windows machine and an iPad. Use that as an example. So now you have, as a developer, you have to say, well, I kind of have to build for two. If I'm going to build for two and it's really hard, maybe I build a progressive web app. Maybe I go browser based and be able to run completely off of that? What functionality am I going to give up to simplify my development process? So, as we talk through this, and this being our first episode, we're kind of laying the groundwork here. One of the things that we are constantly going to visit with this is when you're trying to accomplish something, how difficult will it be depending on the configurations and the setups that you have? Are there certain places that this is going to be easier to do than others, and certain challenges that you're going to run into? As I said, I like the fact that when you look at Apple, if you just want things to work, your odds are really good. If you have all Apple stuff, they're going to connect, they're going to interact, you'll be fine. Some of the Android OEMs, very similar mindset. Samsung's a good example. Samsung wants you to get Samsung gear across the board, and they have functionality that interconnects between those devices to provide that ecosystem type of feel. You don't get that as often, though, on the Android side. People tend to buy outside of a particular manufacturer more frequently. They'll find something that often is a better price point or has some specific feature that they like better. But I think between the two and what we're seeing with these operating system updates now is a recognition that the hardware that's available, that's the baseline. And everything else built on top of it is software configuration, software evolution, and software. We're still in that cycle of, we've gotten past we need the newest, heaviest, fastest device. The devices we have can run circles around things 2 years old. It's up to the operating systems and the applications on those to really make them excel. And if you don't have that unity within an ecosystem, it just gets that much harder.
Yeah. And with that, we have come to the end of this first show. So follow us where you like to listen podcast, like us or subscribe to us, and leave us a review. I'm excited to report that Apple is already listing us. Google is already listing us, as well as many other. But we are on the Google podcast as well as the Apple podcast ecosystem. So that's awesome. You can also interact with us on PersonalProductivity.club, and there are going to be other things in there, extras and more.
So, yeah, let me just jump in. I can't encourage people enough. If you want to talk to Augusto and I, and you want to pursue this stuff, or you have things that you want us to dig into, Personal Productivity Club is the place to do it. It's a great interaction point. And if you join and you subscribe, we're going to start to put together over the next couple of months things that are just for those people who are willing to take this to the next step through the club. So I hope to see you there as well.
Yeah. So we are Augusto Pinaud on Art Gelwicks. See you next time from your favorite device.